All right, John. Today we are going to the last frontier. We've you've gone to the last frontier before on this podcast, but we're going to a different last frontier. You went to space. I'm going to Alaska.
Exciting. Alaska's
It's
a weird place.
Dude, it's so weird. And I went there this summer and it is gorgeous. And I did not realize how cut off every town is from every other town. We will get into that in this episode. That a lot of these towns we're going to be talking about, you can't get there by car. You have to get there by boat or airplane. So we are going to be talking about Sonya Ivanoff. Does that name ring a bell?
It rings a bell, but I think of her as Canadian for some reason. Am I wrong? Like being in Canada.
You are wrong.
I'm wrong. Okay, well, there you go.
So it might be a different person, but we'll get into her. I love this story for so many reasons. Unfortunately, for Sonya, beautiful young Alaska native, I don't love what happens to her, but I love this story so much. So Sonya Ivanoff grew up in a village of Unalakleet on the west coast of Alaska. She was known to her family and community members as someone trying to find her way in the world that often seems stacked against young Alaska native women. The statistics surrounding indigenous women in Alaska tell a harrowing story. Alaska Native women experience rates of sexual assault and domestic violence far exceeding national averages, with some studies indicating they face sexual violence at rates more than 2.5 times higher than the national average.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize it was that high.
Yeah, I didn't either. So she is 5 foot 11 inches tall. She's a tall, beautiful lady. She's a star on her basketball team, and she graduates high school. And she wants to ultimately get out of Alaska, but she grew up in Unalakleet, which is a very, very small town that's about 90 miles from Nome, Alaska. And so she decides to move to Nome, Alaska, and her best friend Timmerie, sorry, I'll say this more fluid as we go through, but Timmerie, her and Timmerie moved to the big city of Nome, Alaska. So it's the big city in the area. John, you want to guess its population at this time?
3,000.
3,700 people. Yeah, really good guess. Nome, Alaska serves as the regional hub for the Seward Peninsula. It offered limited opportunities for young people. Economic prospects were constrained, social services were inadequate, and the trauma of historical injustices, forced assimilation, the boarding school era, cultural suppression continued to reverberate through generations. For 4 months of the year, Nome's average temperature is 15 degrees.
Good gracious.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Yeah. And although it's only 90 miles away from her hometown, again, you can't drive there, so you have to fly. So Sonya and Tamari moved to Nome to save up money to move to. They ultimately wanted to move to Hawaii, where they would go to school. During this time, Sonya worked at the front desk at the Nome Hospital. Sonya also had a family living in Nome. It was Tom and Christine, her older sister and brother-in-law, and so they were there helping her adjust to the big city life. It's so funny. There was an interview with them, and they were like, we had to sit her down and tell her, like, this isn't, this is the city. It's 3,700 people.
Jesus.
On the night of August 10th, into the early hours of August 11th, Sonya and Timmerie were leaving a bar after having 1 to 2 beers. Sonya wasn't feeling well, so she was heading home. On the other hand, Timmerie wasn't ready to call it a night, so she decided to go to a friend's house for a while. The two friends walked together for a minute, but when they came to the street that would send them in opposite directions, the two said, "Peace out, pal," which is how they always said goodbye. And then they did a special handshake, then headed in separate directions. John, you got a special handshake with anybody in your life? I love handshakes. I've got one with my nephews, and I have one with several people in my life. I think they're so much fun. The next morning, Timmerie returned to her apartment that she shared with Sonya, but Sonya wasn't home. This was 2002, and neither of the girls had cell phones. So Timmerie thought Sonya had already left for the day or stayed at a friend's house. Timmery worked the front desk at the Aurora Inn. Since the two girls both worked the front desk, the two usually spoke a few times throughout the day. But on this day, Timmery did not hear from Sonya. And to be fair, Sonya wasn't working this day. It was Monday. It was her day off. So she wasn't just sitting at a desk, doing her normal activities. After work, Timmery still hadn't heard from Sonya, and so now her concerns are growing. Timmery began calling her friends and Sonya's sister to track her down, but no one had seen her. Tom and Christine weren't worried at first. They knew Sonya didn't have to work until the following day, so they assumed she needed a break from Timmery or was just out tying one on. Then that night, Timmery's concerns for Sonya turned into a full-blown panic. John, you know what she saw that made her so panicked?
No, I don't.
She saw that Sonya's makeup bag had not been moved all day long.
And that was something that she knew she would have, if she came home to do everything, she would have used her makeup, right?
Yeah, because so she thought maybe we're just two ships passing in the night, like I just haven't seen her. But
Right.
she knew that the makeup bag had not been moved all day, and apparently everybody who knew Sonya, like, makeup was very important to her. She was in like the Miss Native Alaskan pageant, which isn't exactly like, the U.S. Miss America pageants. It's a little bit more about Native American culture, but she did, she was very beautiful, and she, she cared about wearing makeup. So this was, Timmery was like, this would not happen. She would come home at some point, and she would have definitely put on makeup. The next morning, Timmery, it's so crazy when you know people's patterns, how you can just immediately like look at something and you go, oh, this is off. To the outside eye, you'd go, that's crazy. There's no big deal. But like if you know somebody's patterns, you're like, no, this is meaningful. The next morning, Timmery went to her job at the inn, but as often as she could while sitting at the desk, Timmery called everyone she could think of to try to track down Sonya. Timmery quickly learned that Sonya didn't show up for work that day. Next, she called the Nome Police Department to see if Sonya had possibly been picked up and was sitting behind in jail, but again, no luck anywhere. After getting off work, Timmery walks into the Nome PD. Now, Timmery and Sonya were from a really small town that didn't have official police officers. Timmery said she was overwhelmed and didn't really know how to talk to them. So she said, I haven't seen my friend in 2 days, and I'm worried about her. The officers dismissed Timmery's concern and said Sonya is possibly just off partying somewhere. Later that same evening, Tom and Christine, that's her brother and sister-in-law, learned that Sonya hadn't shown up for work that day, and now they also became concerned. Tom and Christine started driving around town looking for Sonya or for anyone who might have run into her. One person in particular that they wanted to talk to was Sonya's friend named Kunik. It's Koonuk, and it's Kunik.
Is that a guy or a girl?
It's a guy. It's his nickname. I don't have his real name. It's like Dennis or something, but Kunik is what everybody knows to him.
Gotcha.
Apparently, the two had a little bit of a past. Kunik had eyes for her. She did not have eyes for him, but the two were still remained very close. Now, Kunik lived in a makeshift camp and would often move from time to time, so Tom and Christine went to the police station to see if they knew where Kunik currently had his camp set up. While telling the cops why they were looking for Kunik, the cops once again dismissed the idea that Sonya was missing, and Tom and Christine went on their way. But then, on Wednesday morning, so now she went missing between Sunday night and Monday morning. And then Monday, Marie was worried about her. Tuesday, she was really worried about her. So finally, on Wednesday morning, Sonya's boss from the hospital called the police department to report her missing. And now, 2 days after Marie first noticed Sonya missing, the cops started their official investigation into the missing girl. Officer Redburn interviewed Marie about Sonya's mental health, the state of their roommate relationship, and just trying to get a gauge if she was running away, if possible self-harm, or what was going on. While Officer Redburn interviewed Marie, a search party started to form. The police department the fire department, and local residents all came together to find Sonya. A few hours later, just outside the city, down Dread Lodge Road, a long road that led to an abandoned gold mine, Sonya Ivanoff's body was found. And word quickly spread through the community, and before too long, Christine, Tom, and Timmery learned the tragic news. Just awful. So she's been missing for 2.5 days, and we just found her body. Now, Nome PD, as I said, John, is only 3,700 people. They are unequipped to investigate the crime scene, so they call in the Alaska Bureau of Investigation to assist in evidence collection. The only problem with this is that the ABI is in Anchorage, which is 500 miles away, and there are no roads that connect the two cities, so the ABI team would have to fly in the next day. So that night, Nome officers covered as much of the crime scene as possible with tarps and then took shifts protecting the crime scene. Sonya Ivanoff's murder investigation ABI case officer was Eric Burrows, and he said that the first 24 to 48 hours of investigation are the most critical, but in Alaska, sometimes it takes 24 to 48 hours just to get to the crime scene. John, you do a lot of crime scene investigation, but it's like way after, because it's got to go to the cops and then it's got to go. So like you're not there within the 48 hours. Sometimes probably not even within the first 4 months. So how much?
Both.
Oh, okay. So how important it is to get to the crime scene immediately?
So if it's usually just a major assault or a homicide in our area, I go to the scene. Particularly if there's been guns fired or something, even if I'm not appointed yet.
So you'll just proactively go?
Yeah, I'll go. And I know the people enough in our area. They know why I'm there. Like, I'm assuming there's going to be a defendant that we're going to get. I don't touch anything. And it's really important to get there in that first window of time. Ever how long they have the scene. If you can get there, and I would say within 6 or 8 hours, if I can get there, like if I've heard it's happened on the news and it seems like it's got a dead body or got a major assault, I'll try and go. People in my office know to give me a heads up on stuff they hear before me. The thing is, once this crime scene is released, it changes. No matter what crime scene it is. So you're 100% correct in your statement that like sometimes I'm going months after the fact. Because sometimes we don't, for instance, I have a murder right now. And that murder, the person was in the hospital for 2 weeks, and the police did not hold the scene at all.
Oh, my God.
So they go 2 weeks later when the person passes away, and I end up going 2 weeks after that, after a suspect has been arrested and arraigned. So it's really kind of backwards. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that type of scene where like 6 weeks have passed, you're not seeing the same thing as it was on that night. And that can be as simple as the foliage. Like the trees have changed.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that. That's interesting. Okay, so it's not that long, several weeks, but it does take, 24 hours after they found her body, which has already been out there for several days. Thankfully, by the time that the ABI arrived, the crime scene hadn't been altered too much by weather or wild animals. The officers said that they worried all night that a grizzly would stumble on Sonya's body and then really wreak havoc. But thankfully, when the ABI showed up, the crime scene was pretty much intact for when they found it. Timmery told NBC the same thing she told the police. Sonya just didn't have enemies. She was goofy, always laughing, kind to everyone she met. And Nome had seemed like such a safe place for Sonya, a close-knit community where everyone knew each other, just like the one that she'd grown up in. A tribal leader told the Anchorage Daily News that people disappear over there. And he's right. According to the DOJ's National Missing and Unidentified Persons Database, Nome, Alaska has the highest rate of missing persons in the country, with 3 times as many missing per 100,000 than Arizona, the state with the second highest rate.
Wow.
When the investigation team finally reached the site, a few things immediately stood out. Near the pool of blood where Sonya's body had been found, tire tracks cut through the earth and the blood. One of the treads, though, was unique, suggesting that maybe the vehicle had mismatched tires. So they're saying that the tire prints that went through Sonya's blood was most likely 3 tires that were the same tire and then 1 tire that was different.
How in the world does a car go through somebody's blood with all 4 tires? That is crazy.
Apparently a lot of blood. But that's a good point. Or maybe it was that they had to back up, do like a 3-point turn or something.
Yeah.
They also found a smear of light blue paint on nearby branches. So whatever car had been driving through there had likely left it behind, and because of the height of the paint transfer, they assumed the vehicle to be a truck or SUV. And I like how you said that, like the foliage thing, because that's really interesting. It kind of plays into this. So like if they had showed up several months later, like they wouldn't have that piece of information.
Yeah, and it looks different. Do you know what I mean? Like when you walk up and like this is so August?
Yeah.
Like that's wild to think of how it would look in August versus particularly in Alaska, December.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. John, you want to guess who drives a blue truck with mismatching tires?
Half of Nome?
Yes, half of Nome. But specifically, Koenig, who we were talking about earlier. So
He's have to change the tire at some point, huh?
yeah. So the cops immediately want to talk to him.
Okay.
From the outside, Koenig was an unlikely suspect. He and Sonya were great friends, and as her family told Dateline, there had even been some whispers that the two might date, but nothing had ever come of it. To everyone's knowledge, their relationship had stayed strictly platonic. Still, as officers began to piece together clues, suspicions grew. So from the outside, everybody thought, Koenig's a great guy. But Koenig was not unfamiliar to the Nome Police Department. They had responded to calls of domestic violence from his baby mama. Digging deeper, the evidence against Koenig only mounted. Inside his truck, police uncovered 3 rifles stashed behind the driver's seat. That's probably pretty common in Nome, though. One of them, though, had blood on its butt, and blood was everywhere. There was droplets on the floorboard, smeared on the tires. He had a tarp in the back that had a bunch of dry blood on it, and in the tire wells, there was blood, suggesting that he might have kicked it up when he drove through Sonya's blood. But when investigators questioned Koenig about their findings, he insisted that he had nothing to do with Sonya's murder, and that it had been several weeks since he'd seen her last, and that on the night she disappeared, he was 70 miles away, hunting with friends. He attributed the blood in his truck to running over a rabbit, and other blood to shooting a porcupine while hunting. And when the investigators noticed a suspiciously fresh scratch on his back, Koenig claimed it was from a recent altercation with his ex. All right, so he's driving a car that's the right color. It's 1 mismatched tire. He's got blood everywhere and a scratch. So they're really we got this guy, right?
It's so a porcupine. I'm just throwing that out that he said porcupine. Of all things, I don't think you can make that up.
Yeah.
He shot a porcupine.
I like that detail. Yeah, I like that you notice that detail because it's very specific, right?
Yes.
So they take Koenig to the hospital where he's going to be examined by a nurse and having his photos taken of his injuries, and they also collected his DNA. All signs were pointing towards Koenig, but then the forensic tests started to come in. The blood in and on Koenig's truck wasn't human blood, and all of his alibis were checking out. Police even found the dead porcupine right where Koenig said he had shot it.
The fact that they went looking for the porcupine is hilarious to me, but that also shows they're doing decent police work.
Absolutely. Up until this point, yeah. And some of them, we'll find out, some of them aren't. It was also at this time the police discovered the origins of the tire tracks and blue paint. A horrified couple called the police and said that their truck had left the tire tracks and blue paint. They had pulled over on that exact abandoned road that night, just possibly moments after Sonya's body had been dumped. And they drove through her blood, unknowingly drove through her blood, but pulled over just for the guy to go to the bathroom real quick. And then they exited that street. So, John, how crazy is that? They were moments away. Because, I mean, her blood had already seeped out enough that they could drive through it. But they were moments away from possibly crossing paths with this killer out in the middle of nowhere.
That's crazy to think about, but also, like, how, like, that screws everything up. So now you have no tire tracks. The blue paint is taken care of.
And literally, this was their main leads, because I'll get into it right now. But there wasn't a lot of evidence. So out of leads, the investigation into Sonya's murder started to slow. Most of the officers were pulled from the case, and for the two that remained, the lack of evidence was frustrating. Autopsy had yielded few new clues. There were no signs of sexual assault, and no trace evidence was recovered. No skin scrapings were under her fingernails, no foreign hair, no fingerprints, fibers, or DNA. And since she was found naked, there were no clothes to examine either. So they start noticing, like I said, like you said, it's like frustrating because they lose those two huge clues. And there's no really like forensic evidence. So now the cops kind of start thinking that the perpetrator and Sonya's killer was somebody who was evidence aware. So they committed this crime or covered it up, really focusing on what evidence to cover up.
Interesting. So they're thinking either police, former police, crime scene tech or analyst, something like that.
Yep. So that, yeah, well, they're at this point, they're kind of not narrowed down like that, but they're just like, they have noted that it's crazy what lack of.
So it could just be a CSI fan.
Yeah, absolutely. So Sonya's brother-in-law, Tom, was worried that Sonya's case would go cold and cops would stop investigating it. So he decided that every morning he would go to the police station and check in on the progress of the case. He wanted them to know that Sonya's family wouldn't just forget about it and move on. On one of these visits, while particularly discouraged at the officer's level of concern, Tom pinned a picture of Sonya on the wall. And to this, I mean, I wouldn't have much faith in him after this. To this, the officers flipped out on Tom and said that the walls had just been drywalled and painted, and that he had just put a hole in their fresh new wall.
We're charging you with vandalism, sir.
I know, dude. That is the shit that you read sometimes, and it's like just mind blowing. They didn't charge him, but they did like yell at him and tell him that he's being irrational and stuff. Without many other options, so there's two officers working on it, and Officer Redburn's one of them, but he's at night, and the officer who's investigating during the day is not communicating with him, and so he's not getting any information. And so he decides that he's just going to start from the beginning and go through the whole case file and just see what he can find.
By himself?
Yep. Yeah, and kind of just like re-go from it, say I'm a one-man team on this, and just keep evidence close to his chest, and he was just going to investigate everything. Because the other officer would be like, oh, we'll go talk to this family, and then he'd never hear anything back, right? So Officer Redburn was working at nights, and he used the slow periods to review Sonya's entire file, looking for anything that might have been missed. And he found something. Deep in the file, he saw a note that Florence Habros had called in to report that she saw Sonya the night she disappeared, but no one had ever followed up with her. So he decided to pay her a visit, and he learned that around 1:30 a.m., Florence and her, I've seen it reported different ways. Daughter-in-law is one way, but sister is another way.
A relative of some kind.
A relative, and I think it's a younger relative, because Florence and this other girl were smoking cigarettes on the front porch when Sonya walked by. Now, Florence didn't know Sonya, but the woman that Florence was smoking the cigarette with knew Sonya, and the two exchanged a quick wave to each other, and then Sonya kept walking down the road. And soon after that, Florence noticed a Nome PD SUV drive past Sonya and continued down the street. Then, as Sonya was about to cross the street Then, as Sonya was about to cross the street at the end of the block, that same Nome PD SUV, now traveling perpendicular to the road it was just on. So does that make sense, John? She's like walking down one road, the SUV passed her, probably goes around the block, and now is traveling perpendicular to the road he was just on.
Yep, that makes sense.
So as Sonya is about to cross the road, that same the Nome PD SUV pulls up right in front of her. Florence says Sonya stuck her head in for a moment and then jumped into the passenger seat. As far as Officer Redburn knew, this was the last time anyone had seen Sonya alive.
So she gets in the car according to a witness statement?
According to a witness statement, that same night she goes missing, she jumps into not just a car, a Nome PD car.
That's what I mean. She gets into his car.
Yeah.
I assume him or her. Sorry, Nome PD.
After learning this information, Officer Redburn had narrowed his suspect pool from everyone living in Nome to now everyone who worked at the Nome PD. The Nome PD's SUVs were operated through a system called hot seating, meaning that officers didn't have their own vehicles. The department had 3 SUVs, and when an officer was on duty, they just hopped in whichever one was available. Technically, every officer has access to each vehicle, so it could be every officer in the Nome PD could be a suspect. But after a quick check with the schedule, Redburn learned that there were just 2 officers on duty the night Sonya disappeared. They were Matt Owens and Stan Piscoya. Sorry, I wanted to say something. I thought of something to say while I was reading the last paragraph, but now I forgot it. Okay, so like I said, the ABI flew in at the beginning, but after they learned that the truck lead was dead, resources started to be pulled. So now it was just Redburn and that other officer who were investigating the case. So now Redburn goes, this is too internal. We got to call the ABI back out here.
Yeah, the troopers or the state bureau's got to come back out for that.
Yeah.
Because down to 2 suspects and they're both police because of the way the cars go and the way the scheduling goes. There's no way you can let a Nome police department investigate a Nome police officer.
Absolutely. So this is where Burroughs comes back to Nome to take over the case. And before long, both men were scheduled to fly to Anchorage for questioning. But the day before their trip, so the day before they're supposed to go, the department faced a new mystery when one of Nome's 3 police cruisers suddenly went missing. Patrol car 321. A sergeant had noticed its absence a little before 1 a.m., and soon after, a search for the stolen vehicle was underway. After a few hours, Matt Owens radioed in. He'd found the missing cruiser and was going to get closer to investigate. 2 minutes later, he radioed again, and it said this time he was screaming, "Shots fired! Shots fired! Get the fuck over here! Shots fired!"
What?
I know, right?
What?
Back up. So he's in a shootout with somebody who just stole a car. Backup raced to the scene, relieved to discover that Matt was safe. When the commotion died down, Matt explained what happened. That he'd found the missing patrol car and started walking towards it when suddenly the driver jumped out of the car and opened fire before fleeing into the woods. Officers quickly searched the area but could not find the fleeing suspect. Examining the car, officers found clues that appeared to connect the missing police cruiser to Sonya's murderer. Not only had it been abandoned at the gravel pit just across the road from where Sonya's body had been found, but on the driver's side seat there was an envelope. Inside was Sonya's missing ID, and alongside it was an ominous note that read, "Pigs. I hate cops. I hate every one of you. Sonya was just a person in the wrong place at the wrong time. I do not know her. As you can see, it was easy for me to take your pig car keys right there. It was not her fault. She thought I was a pig and shit just happened. She was just a person, and I just wanted to see if I could that night. Every one of you should be more careful. I watch every move you make. You leave me alone, and I will leave you alone. I will also shoot you in the head if you get close."
Okay, so first of all, is this handwritten?
No, it's typed.
Okay, so just you and I talking for a second. We know that note sounds like a cop wrote it.
Yeah, and I mean the gratuitous like pigs and like trying to separate, like that's what it feels like to me. It's like I'm trying to
Yep.
separate myself from you.
Ding, ding, ding. 100%. You hit the nail on the head.
So just like the crime scene, the note, the envelope, and even the police cruiser contained no evidence or DNA, fingerprints, or any other trace evidence. The cops took the lack of evidence again to think the person responsible for Sonia's murder was the author of the note. So the note says that, I stole the SUV, I took the keys right out of your car. I'm definitely not a cop. But Eric Burrows, the ABI investigator, in his research, he found out that this would not be the first time a police cruiser had been stolen right out in front of the police station, because they often left the cruisers unlocked with their keys in it. So there is a precedent for people stealing as police SUVs. It's just like the opening scene in Varsity Blues.
I do 100%. And I'm also here for this as a Netflix limited series. This story. I am not familiar with where this is going, but I would watch this.
Absolutely. So Burroughs was like, okay, well, it could have been stolen. Like, I'll admit that the police cruiser was stolen, but he was still really skeptical of Owen's story because nothing about it made sense. Like, he said that whenever he was approaching the vehicle, he saw the brake lights come on. So for the brake lights to come on means somebody has to be in the vehicle. But then he also said he never saw anybody in the vehicle, and when he was going, like, approaching the car, and then after the guy jumped out of the driver's seat and started firing shots, Owen said he ran into the woods. But to Burroughs, this didn't sound right, because I told you it was like at a cement factory. So there was a bunch of like really large things for him, like closer than running into the woods, for him to take fire. And so he's like, officers would not act like this in this situation. So just something sounded very fishy to Burroughs. So the day after patrol car 321 went missing, Matt Owens was scheduled for police questioning in Sonia's case. But according to the investigators, Owens claimed he was still really shaken from being shot at and asked to see a therapist instead of flying out for his interviews. In the meantime, state troopers started looking into Owen's background. It didn't take long for them to discover a slew of allegations pointing to a history of inappropriate sexual relationships. As state trooper Eric Burrows claims, Owens, who preferred to work the night shift, had a habit of picking up women for unauthorized ride-alongs, allegedly even having sex with them while on duty. Some of the women even described something very similar to what Florence had seen, claiming that Owens would follow them in the car while they were walking before pulling ahead of them, then cutting them off, and then asking them to get in.
Get in, little girl.
That's so creepy.
So, God. It's a cop!
And it's a cop. Eventually, Owens was brought in for questioning, but he denied having anything to do with Sonia's murder or the theft of patrol car 321. But he relented. He and Sonia's paths had crossed on occasion. She worked nights at the hospital, and the two had occasionally interacted when Owens brought in folks needing medical attention during his shift. So they've got him here. They've got him really suspicious. They find out that when they were interviewing the other officer, Sequoia or whatever his name was, they learned that the two had responded to a domestic violence call right before 1 a.m. They had to take the person into custody. But then afterwards, Matt's whereabouts were unknown for 4 hours. The other officer, you kind of track his night, but Matt Owens, his night could not be accounted for 4 hours. So they were aware that of the ride-along allegations, and so they decided to strap him up to a polygraph test.
You cannot refuse that if you're in the position of being an officer accused, by the way, in most jurisdictions.
You can't refuse a polygraph test?
I mean, you can, but you're not going to be an officer anymore.
But wouldn't they just have like their union rep sitting right there, or their like?
In a lot of bigger places, yes, that would all go through union reps and lawyers. I'm just imagining that the union reps in Nome maybe, I don't know, that maybe it's one more episode in the Netflix limited series of this thing.
Let's do it. So the investigator asked, would it be unusual for you on a patrol night to pick up women or meet women or, give people a ride? Matt responded, no, that's definitely not unusual. I do give people ride-alongs with me, both male and female. But when he was asked if he ever picked women up to have sex with him, Owens pushed back. He said, I'm not going around picking up women on or off duty. I mean, even when I'm off duty. The investigator asked, not even once? And Matt replied, not that I know of. No, sir. I don't remember not one single time. That's not me to do that. And so then Matt gets really defensive and he starts asking, like, why is my sexual proclivities have anything to do with this investigation? They try to say that, well, because it happens during work, so it's our business. And he's pushing back that he's never had sex while on duty.
So, question.
Go ahead.
Maybe the real answer is sometimes I pick up men to have sex with. And that's what he's hiding. Maybe he's closeted and he's upset because sometimes it happens.
And that's the secret that is funny though. Whenever people are hiding one secret to like, they
blame everything.
Yeah, but it makes them look fishier for like a bigger thing. It's like, no, they just don't want to tell that they were getting their nails done or something. And then it's like, but just tell them because that's your alibi. You're being accused of murder.
Yeah.
So after the polygraph test, Owens is informed that he failed the polygraph test, to which he replies, shit.
Not a great reply, now he has to tell the truth about some things in his life, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, so at this point, things aren't looking good for our boy Matt, and slowly even more evidence is gathered, making Matt look guiltier and guiltier. Investigators learned that Owens had been spotted at a place called Coffee Creek Hunting Camp, burning things in the fire pit just shortly after Sonya was murdered. When police searched, they discovered several remnants of burned clothing, including eyelets from Skechers sneakers, which she was wearing, and buttons that matched the brand of jeans Sonya was seen wearing her last night.
Ouch.
They also found a key that I saw it reported a couple of different ways, but they found a key to his uncle's mailbox, his post office box, which he had access to, but the uncle, I saw it was reported that it's not the uncle's key. It's a Sonya's like key to her apartment, but what I saw the most was it's a mailbox key, but the uncle says that he didn't have access to it, so who knows.
Interesting.
Soon, Officer Owens was arrested and indicted on charges of first-degree murder and tampering with physical evidence. When the news made headlines, several women finally felt safe enough to come forward about their experiences with the former cop. According to a Dateline episode, 6 women told stories of his abuse, alleging everything from stalking to rape. In one case, a woman alleged that Owens assaulted her, and he told her no one will believe a drunk Alaska Native over a police officer. One of the women said she'd filed a complaint, and another said she mentioned the assault to someone else in the department, but neither had resulted in any follow-ups, let alone any punishment or accountability. And John, you know what another woman came forward and said?
I don't know. What?
She came forward and said that Owens had raped her. The next morning, she walked into the police station to file a complaint against him. But when she asked to speak to an officer, it was Owens that came out to take her report. So she just hung her head and left.
Holy cow. That would suck.
All right, we're building up to his trial. And Owens' ex-wife, now ex-wife, but they were going through divorce at the time of Sonya's murder. They were navigating a bitter divorce, and they were sharing custody of their child. On the day Sonya was reported missing, Owens called his ex-wife. He was watching their son and asked if she could take him early, saying that he had to work on a missing girl's case and that, quote, it didn't look good. Owens' wife said she remembered the date of the call because it was Matt's birthday. And the problem with the timing of Matt's supposed call to his wife is Sonya hadn't been reported missing yet.
At all? Oh, you're right. Yeah, because the roommate's going to do it.
Yep. And so, but again, I mean, I know she said it was his birthday, so I have the date. But again, like, she didn't say this immediately afterwards. It was a couple months later. Like, I think you could convince yourself that you're right, that he said that the day, you know. I think you could have your days off just a bit, you know?
Yeah.
At trial, the prosecution called nearly 70 witnesses, building a case through a plethora of circumstantial evidence. They claimed Owens had not only murdered Sonya, but he'd also staged the theft of patrol car 321, planted the note and Sonya's ID in the attempt to lead police astray. In fact, analysis of the note's paper and printing style showed that the letter could have come from a printer that Owens had direct access to. To prove Owens had killed Sonya, though, they highlighted Florence's last sighting, the 5 hours Owens was unaccounted for that night, the call he had with his ex-wife, and the clothing remnants found in the burn pit. When pieced together, it didn't look good. Even though the absence of DNA and fingerprints became as evidence, troopers testified that removing Sonya's clothing and the lack of trace evidence showed her killer had been evidence aware, similar to that of a police officer. After closing arguments, the jury deliberated for 40 hours without coming to a consensus. With a hung jury, the judge declared a mistrial.
Ouch.
Because it was believed the trial location could have influenced the outcome, Owens' second trial was held in a different part of Alaska. A plane ride away from Nome, because everything is a plane ride from Nome. This summer I went up there, I said, John, and I was on a cruise, and half the places where I went to were not accessible by car. They were only accessible by plane and boat. So this is the norm up there. The prosecution would run the same case, but this time the outcome was different. Owen was found guilty of both charges and sentenced to 101 years in prison. In 2007, Governor Sarah Palin signed the Sonya Ivanoff Act, a legislative move that mandates a minimum of 99 years sentences for any police officer convicted of first-degree murder while on duty. And that sounds like that should probably, be like just a thing that we all have, but also, God forbid, we ever have to use it. But listen to this. According to a 2020 Anchorage Daily News article, 43 people were killed by Alaska law enforcement over a 5.5-year period. Today, Matt Owens is still in prison, and he is, to this day, proclaiming his innocence.
So I did know about this case. When you said that last part, I remembered a couple things about it. This Ivanoff law, I remembered. Because that means a cop killing on duty gets 99 years in prison, automatic. I also remember the appeals. Did Northern Exposure take place in Nome, Alaska?
It was somewhere around there, probably.
Or was it? It could have been something different. But like now, I'm remembering like where I got all of my knowledge of Alaska originally. It's probably Northern Exposure. So what was interesting about this story, and one of the things that made me go look at the appeal for Matt Owens, and I had blanked her name, I don't know why, is a .22 caliber weapon. And I'm always interested in people that use .22 caliber weapons because I think a lot of times they're former law enforcement or military.
Really?
Yeah, it takes some balls to kill somebody with a .22. And like a lot of people do that now, but a lot of times they have some kind of training with a weapon. It could be as simple as they hunted when they were kids. And I carry a .22 as my backup. I have a lot of training with weapons. And I'm always interested when I hear somebody use a .22 caliber weapon to murder someone, specifically if it's not like, like a second-degree murder of some kind where somebody pops into a gas station and they're robbing the clerk and the clerk gets shot, and that happens to be a .22 caliber, which usually it's multiple bullets. Interesting part about this case is, if I recall correctly, she was shot once in the back of the head with a .22 caliber weapon. And if that's the case, that's interesting to me.
Yeah, now that I'm thinking, I think she was shot. Yeah, I think she was shot once, maybe twice. but I think once.
I read at some, and I did not commit any of this to memory because I was reading for like a really specific reason. About 6 or 7 years ago, this came up for appeal. And when it came up for appeal, they were going after the defense attorneys who originally represented him. So a lot of what I read had very little to do with Sonya herself. It had to do with how the case had been presented and mistakes that his attorneys made.
Yeah.
But they really carefully documented like every time they communicated with the prosecution and everything. So if you can find it, it would be like Owens versus Alaska, or state of Alaska versus Owens, maybe a 2015, 16, 17 appeal. If you can find that document, it's really interesting to read how they documented their conversations with him, because he did insist he was innocent. Mm-hmm. The other thing about this case that I now remember that you're talking, I've told it the way that you were telling the story, is, have you ever heard of Making a Murderer, the murder of Teresa Halbach? So
yeah,
it has a lot of similarities to that case. There was a key, there was these rivets, because like that's one of the things in Teresa Halbach's murder. I always thought like some of the stuff in the Teresa Halbach case, and I'm not saying Stephen Avery is innocent or anything like that. I always thought some of them were suspiciously cop-like. So now that you say this, like there's no evidence in the vehicle overall. There's burned evidence on site or close or remotely, because Matt Owens burned it up at a hunting camp.
Yep.
So like whenever stuff like that happens, I always like wonder like if there was either a cop, a former cop, or a relative of a cop. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like were they responsible when there's this much attention to it? This guy really blows it though with the whole note to the police and like the stolen patrol car where he has a shootout with a phantom person. That's all so weird to me.
I love this story. I mean, I'm fascinated whenever cops are the perpetrators. But the shootout. The
fake shootout is crazy, man.
Gets me so
now
much.
That you said all that, I didn't know those details of this story. So like when you're saying that, all I can picture is, how dumb are you, man? Yeah. What kind of reindeer games are you up to?
And it baffles me because I'm a person who doesn't have the most self-confidence in some areas of my life. So I always love when people are just blindly confident. He's like, yeah, I'll just shoot a couple of slugs into that tree. I'll shoot a couple back at my car. And then I'm going to tell people that this is what happened. And everybody's just going to believe me. Like, it blows my mind when people have that much self-confidence. I'm like, no, I can get away with this.
So that is like, have you ever heard the phrase like, give me the gumption of a mediocre white man or something like that? No. Like, I'm assuming Matthew Owens is white. I have never looked him up for anything except for the appellate documents. Like, he sort of fits that phrasing. Like, the stuff he does here. Like, first of all, getting hooked up to the polygraph. I'm sorry, even if I'm not going to have my job tomorrow, I'm not taking your polygraph. I'm just not.
Especially not going to do it. Guilty?
Not at all. I'm not going to take your polygraph. Dude, if I'm smart about the way I live my life, knock on wood, I'm never in the position of somebody from a state bureau coming to me and being like, we need you to take a polygraph over this homicide. If I'm smart about it.
Yeah.
If I find myself in that position, either way, I'm not taking your polygraph. I don't want the one time I fail a polygraph out of anxiety to be like the thing that like people remember about me. I'd rather be fired and like then we'll deal with the fallout, because a lawyer would kick your ass for having taken that polygraph.